Do not fear! Hoo-ha! Saf is here, and welcome to Saf Surgery and Spirituality Gone Wild. And we are sponsoring and supporting Feel Good Factor TV every Saturday morning in the UK, Sky Channel 192 showcase. And today, what a guest I've got today. I don't know where to start. She has been such a massive part of my life, especially this year, and the way we met and how far I have grown as an individual is all credit to the work of this wonderful woman, and her name is Manmeet Chowdhry. Manmeet is a special lady. She has integrated her extensive study of human behavior with her experience and knowledge of business management and sales to provide new technologies to empower individuals and teams to improve their performance and sense of fulfillment. This woman is incredible. She's a dedicated hard worker in everything she does, and I could go on about the qualifications that she has in business management, but the biggest one I want to talk about is that she is one of the main mentees of the legendary Dr Demartini, who has also been on this show. But now I have the lady who not only introduced me to Dr. John, but also has been a big part of my life in being a mentor in some way, but educating me and teaching me the model, the Demartini method, and the breakthrough experience, which we'll talk all about this. But Manmeet is making a difference in lives globally, and she is the ultimate specialist in universal laws, and all my learnings and readings is all because of her, and today gives me an opportunity to learn even more. So it's great to have her. But without further ado, Manmeet, I know you're there in the green room. Let me see your face, baby. Let me see your face. Hey,
Saf.
How you doing? It's
I'm all the better to see you now.
hey, I don't blame you. No, it's so lovely to have you. It's crazy. When we first met, we met through and I won't say the name, but we went through another platform that we were both part of. I forgot the name myself now, but I think you know who it is. The first, his name's Will, but I forgot the name of the actual something mind something. Anyway, and that's how we met, and it was strange because the Dr. John Demartini, who we're going to speak a bit about, I guess. He was in the UK. This is way before lockdown. He was in the UK and he was presenting his breakthrough experience and talking about what he does. And normally it's a paying facility, and you had like someone dropped out or something happened, but you had a ticket for me.
I had a ticket, and and we'd been talking. I think it was literally within 24 hours, and intuitively, I kind of went, okay, who's this ticket for? And, my intuition just said Saf. And I reached out to you and I said, right, this evening, I think it was that evening or the following evening, I said to you, get down to Tottenham Court Road and come here. Dr. John Demartini speak. He was doing an evening talk that day. So, and then our friendship, our journey started from there, didn't it, really?
It did. I mean, what's quite funny is I remember I got there early and I gave you a text saying, shall I save you a seat? And do you remember? and you said, I'm actually going to be on stage. I went, oh. Okay.
Yeah, I said, you'll see me at the front. That's right.
Obviously, all these months later, I've realised that, my God, you had your own seat, and you've had your seat with the Demartini Institute for many years, and we will talk about it. And then something else happened that day as well. I learned that your brother was Paul Chowdhry,
yes.
who's a stand-up comic, and again, I've had we've been in the same film together.
Uh-huh.
Many years ago, and I'm thinking, wow, this is a small world. I mean, I always knew Paul was in the same film as I was. Different, we were never in the same scene together, but many years ago, 20 years later, literally, I'm with Manmeet Chowdhry, who's a sister of Paul, and doing something else in a deeper level with the sister as opposed to the brother. But he's done amazing, and I'm sure I think he has. He's also been to your lectures many times, and he's been part. He's learned the Demartini method, has he, or has he been from it?
Yes,
So,
he has.
and I think that's been a massive part of his career progression as well, I'm sure. But let's talk about you. This program is called Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. Good morning, USA. Good afternoon, USA. Good morning, Australia. Good evening, Europe. We've got everyone watching. I'd like to think
Wow.
South America as well. We have a nice audience in Costa Rica, believe it or not.
Well, thank you, first of all, Saf. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It really is an inspiration to be on a show like Inspirational People. I set out wanting to be one of those people, and to be on a show like this with the same name is definitely very humbling. So thank you so much for inviting me on.
Well, you definitely are an inspiration. You have been for me and for many others. Like I said in the introduction, what you do is incredible, and I really want to get down to it. But before we get down to that, I just want to know a little bit about you before this journey that you're on now. Before you started to inspire people in the way you inspire people today, because I'm sure you've inspired people all your life. But a bit about your childhood and where you were and where you weren't and where you wanted to be and how you got to where you are today. So over to you, Manmeet.
Sure. Well, I was born and bred here in the UK, and if I just talk a little bit about like how I got into obviously what I do, I've been working since I was 16. Started off with my first ever job at Body Shop, actually. So in fact, the education, the advisory side of things had been there from the beginning, because I used to advise people what products to use, and what the benefits and drawbacks were of each product, and anyway, so from 16 I took on this role of saleswoman, and throughout my whole life that's really what I've been doing. And I'd been typically like top saleswoman in most of my roles that I did. In fact, all of them. And then there came a moment when I was working for a laser eye surgery clinic in Harley Street. And I did actually help them transform their clinic, where they bought the building on, Harley Street itself. And it was such an inspiring workplace to work for. But my sales actually took a nosedive dip at one point. And it had nothing to do with the fact that I didn't know how to sell, because the selling skill, wasn't the issue. But I had a lot of personal issues going on at the time. There were some health issues, some relationship issues, financial issues. And that was when I, had come across Dr. John Demartini. And prior to that, I'd been into personal development and quite a lot, and followed, the likes of Anthony Robbins, and done Landmark, and spent some time with Bob Proctor and Les Brown and all the very influential people. But I was still kind of left with this, what else? Still searching for something that I could really understand. How does our life work? Why do humans act in a certain way based on their behaviors? Why do they do certain things? And why do we experience certain things, certain events? Why do some people experience them, some people don't? Some people got the better kind of hand of the cards dealt than other people, and why is that? So and I came across Dr. John Demartini at the time. I think you and I have discussed that the time I did come across him was at my own, my most low of my life, and wanting to end it was really the only option I had at the time, in my perception. And after I met Dr. John Demartini, I really feel that I got my second life, because I really understood that there was something other than, well, let's just try to think positive when you have problems. I was learning a reproducible tool, some reproducible understanding of the universal laws. and I was like, okay, this is really interesting. Maybe I might hang around and find out a bit more about this. And well, let's say 12 years later, I'm still hanging around on this planet, finding out more and more every single day.
The funny thing is, I remember when you told me a story, when you told me this before, you were actually quite reluctant to actually go to the event initially, right?
I
You
was.
you've been to so many. You said to yourself, I think you remember your words were like, "Well, it's going to be the same as everything else. How is this going to change? How is this going to change?" And it's changed your life forever, I think, isn't it? It's
Absolutely. Yeah, it's transformed I mean, my friend who told me to go, because I'd been to so many of these personal development events, I actually said to him, I was like, I'm not going. It's just a waste of time. What's he going to tell me I don't already know? You know, and even when I went kicking and screaming, you know, I literally did sit there with my, you know, arms crossed going, oh, you know, this is just going to be one other of those happy stand up clap kind of seminars, you know, but it was really the opposite. It was very grounding, very centered, and a lot about, it just made sense. I mean, you know, the work, you know, it just makes more sense than I've come across before. And you know, that kind of chasing that happy life side of things. If I was to use the word happy, you know, I haven't been happier, but I'm actually a lot more fulfilled living my life now, embracing life the way it comes to me.
so. When was the moment that you said, "I want to take this work further, and I'm going to use it myself to help other people and to inspire people"? When was that? Was it that day when you went, or was it a bit later on?
No, that day was all about me. That day, when I was at the event, that was definitely about me. It was, I wanted to know, for me and my issues that were happening at the same, you know, at that time, how did this all fit into that? You know, Dr. John Demartini talked about the perfection in the universe and how there's two sides to everything. And, you know, life is like a magnet. And I'm going, this is the first time I've heard. And for me, I think, you know, positive thinking, negative thinking, what he was explaining to me, if I had to put a label on it, would be realistic thinking. And so for that reason, that was just about me. I wanted to go to his signature program to learn more, which, you know, you've done now with me as well. And I went to the Breakthrough Experience program. And I know that obviously on this show we talk, you know, you talk about some perceived traumatic events and things like that. And I remember asking Dr. Demartini at his talk, because he talked about things like being grateful for the things that you go through. I actually said to him, and when I spoke to him at the end of the talk, and I went, you can't tell me that people who have been raped or murdered can be grateful for, you know, or family members who've been murdered can be grateful for what happened. And, you know, he just said to me, he goes, have you booked onto my breakthrough experience? And before he answered, and I said, yes, I have. So he goes, so instead of me answering, seeing as you're already booked on, why don't you see it for yourself? Because he said at the time, he said, you know, 1 in 4 women are raped or incested. And he said, there will be people at the program who will be working through this issue. Don't take my word for it. See the transformation that happens for them. And of course, that wasn't just the only, I would say, traumatic event people were going through. There was all different types of things that people were going through, you know, like loss of money, loss of businesses, and people dealing with bullies in their life, and people dealing with family members who'd incested them, or, you know, again, like I said, rape, and some people even working with on the individual who'd also, you know, murdered their family members. So there were a lot of different type of traumatic events that we were, you know, I was witnessing there. When I saw their transformation, and I had the transformation for myself, because by the time I went to the program, actually, Saf, I had a physical issue and I couldn't walk. And at the time, I remember speaking to Dr. Demartini, because he talks a lot about the mind-body connection. And I said, well, you talk about, you know, sometimes what's going on in the body is definitely some sort of feedback from a psychosomatic perspective. And he quickly identified what was going on for me. He said, well, you know, you can work on it this weekend. I don't know your mind-body limitations, so it may shift something, it may not. Well, I was there with my best friend at the time, Vinny, and he had to drive me to the venue because I couldn't walk and I was on crutches. And I walked in on the Saturday with them, and on the Sunday after the program, I walked out without them. And so that was the moment that I said, I want to do this for people. I want to make sure, but I'm a firm believer, Saf, I'm not the kind of individual who'd go, okay, I've done something, now I'm just going to go and teach everybody else or become a coach. I really am a firm believer of, don't try and put somebody else's oxygen mask on until you put your own on. So
that's all I ever say now. People think that's my saying, but it obviously isn't.
Hey, it's all up for grabs, so it's as long as it makes a difference, it doesn't matter whose. So yeah, and I spent the next 4 years working on my own stuff, and I didn't see, like, I wasn't seeing clients or anything like that. I was still working full time, and then I decided in 2012 to train in the Demartini method and become a facilitator. I then further studied, and it's like doing another degree, Saf. Like I tell you, it's not. I perceive this is more than doing a degree of the work, because Dr. Demartini wants to keep his methodology pure. He wants you to understand the principles that have gone behind it, and it's over 40 years of his cross-disciplinary research that's gone into the method. So he's very some people say it's pedantic. I say it's actually, it's inspiring to see him wanting to keep things in the pure form. And so 2015, I became a certified facilitator. And just last year, I became the only senior facilitator in the Demartini method for Europe. So it's been a journey. And I do it full time now, and I love it, and I wouldn't be doing anything else.
The work that you do, I mean, I'm not going to say you take it to a different level, because Dr. John Demartini he's so experienced, and he's experienced life like yourself and I, many people haven't experienced. So his level, and obviously he's the one who's founded this model, and he's the one who's developed this model, and he's the one. This model is his model, and hence it's called the Demartini method.
Yes.
But what you do, and what I found is, because I went through the breakthrough experience, and it was just fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating, because as you know, I've had my own trauma and been through a lot, and now I always look at how it served me today, and that's the biggest thing I've learned. And we're not saying what's happened is right or wrong. In most cases it's very wrong. That's not what's in the question. What's in question is, how has it served me today? And that's how I try and teach my clients and the people who watch this. But what you bring, because I've been educated by you and trained by you as well. And what you bring is, for me, some authenticity to the training, simplicity yet clarity, and the way you project yourself. It was so easy for me to grasp, and I think it is for many people who come under you, and I thank you for that. I feel humbled and blessed that we've met, because when people say, and they say it just randomly, that this person you've literally transformed my life. This year for me has been, and we're talking a year of lockdown, we're talking a year of COVID-19, we're talking a year of distress. You have transformed my life, and arguably, well, it's not an argument, it's been the best year of my life. And I don't think that would have been the case if I never met you. And
that's very humbling. Thank you.
It's the God's honest truth, and that's why I'm so happy that you're here today. And I want all my audience and I want everyone to realize that that's why I try and also educate and train people with the work that you have helped me with. I'm a long way away from where I want to be, and we will continue working together, no doubt about that. But the day when you helped me remove some guilt and shame, it changed my life forever. And we're going to come to how it changed my life. This show is not about me today. This show is about honoring you and the work that you do. Can you tell me a bit about, is it right in saying your version of the Demartini method, or is it actually the Demartini method?
No, yes, it's the Demartini method. The thing is, like, for all it is that I like to simplify things, and Dr. Demartini does his thing, and what I like, you know, we can grasp it. Those sometimes who are into personal development can grasp it. And then you go, well, the people who are sometimes only just starting out their journey. So what I do is I create this pathway for individuals to go through that actually gives them the work in a simple way. And then what they're doing is they're getting the next level. So a lot of my clients and students, they work with me, and then they go to, you know, the breakthrough experience. And obviously when they're at the breakthrough experience, they're getting a lot more from it because of the foundations that have been laid before as well. And also the opposite way, like you did it, you know, you did the breakthrough experience first and then came to my workshops. And so people get a great refresher. So, you know, I work alongside, you know, the breakthrough experience. And even when Dr. Demartini does it offline, you know, I had the facilitation team here in the UK. So it doesn't really matter which way you do it, because it's just a matter of what really suits, and you're going to get what you're ready for anyway. Does that make sense? But I'm inspired to simplify things so that, you know, I can have even the younger people understand it, and also have some adults actually, you know, being able to teach it to their children as well. You know, so that's kind of like, you know, complex ideas, and you know, where they got the science involved, I'm stripping away some of it and just going, okay, let's, you know, very simply put a few things together so people can understand how's the brain working without some of the technical terms. So I put some fun in there, and I talk about drug dealing, and I talk about, you know, our chemists that we have, as you know. So I'm sure we'll go into that in a little while when you ask me some things. So yeah, so that's kind of what I do, is like I'm working as the foundation, you know, towards the breakthrough experience, and also a refresher for people who've already been as well.
And when I first came on your wonderful, it was a weekend actually. It was a block. Was it called a blockbuster? It was. You got one coming up, haven't you? Am I right? Is this what it's like, the live blockbusting boot camp? That's what I came.
That's right. That's what you came to.
That's what I came to, and we'll get to that in a minute. But there's something that you've got, and you've changed, and you call it the GPS. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
could you explain what GPS is in your work?
Yeah. So, well, it's this work of values and GPS. It all dates right back to actually the ancient Greeks, and it's the study known as the axiology, and that's the study of values and worth. So what this is that every single human being, no matter what color you are, caste you are, creed you are, religion, we all have a set of priorities. And it's in a hierarchy from what's most important right down to what's least important. And whatever is most important to us, you know, we are inspired from within. We don't need reminding to do those things. We have a lot of attention around it. We're very actually adaptable to change in our highest priority. Anytime we live by our lowest priorities, we have hesitation, we have frustration, we actually procrastinate, because what happens is we procrastinate about doing things because they're so low priority. So unless we're given a reward to do it, or we're told we're going to be punished unless we don't do it, we won't actually do it. So that procrastination, you know, thing that just goes on and on and on is because it's just something that's low in our priorities. Now, the reason I call it your GPS, so I call it the genius priority system, because it's what's driving us on an unconscious level. And what I do is I use the Demartini Values Determination process, which you can go on my website and click under determine your priorities. That can actually determine what your values and priorities are. What is your GPS? And it's a set of questions that basically brings from your unconscious to your conscious mind what is driving you. Because what that hierarchy is it's so important. Like, you know, I say that it's the master key to understanding yourself and understanding other individuals. Because the moment you really truly understand it, you'll see why you make certain decisions in your life, why you create certain emotions in your life, and why you create judgments, you know, in your life. So, like, for example, something that is so important to us, you know, in our life if somebody comes along, you know, let's just say you've got a mother and you know, she's got a baby, and you see them in the street and you go, oh, what a beautiful baby you have, you know, she's just as beautiful as you are, you know, you suddenly start supporting this mother in their priorities. They're going to open up, they're going to want to speak to you more, and they're going to label you good, right? Because you're supporting them in their priorities. But the moment you come in and you know, you see the child on the street and you go, is that yours? And you know, proudly the mum might go, yes, yes, and they go, did you create that? You know, and you go, oh my God, it's such an ugly baby. You've now suddenly challenged, and so, you know, what's she going to do with the pushchair? Literally, like, go off, right? Because you've challenged her in her one of her highest priorities. She's going to shut down. And by the way, as human beings, we shut down physically and emotionally when we're challenged in our highest priorities. So the moment we, you know, shut down, you're not going to want to talk to people. You think they're challenging you in that priorities, and then you label them bad. So whenever we make those good and bad judgments, you know, as you said, when we go through things, in fact, when we go through any event or when we ever experience any individual, it's actually neutral. But the only thing that happens is if we see one side, we will label it good, positive, supportive, or we'll label it bad, negative, and challenging, depending on that. When we see both sides, we say that it's neutral. We see both sides. It's not something we label anymore, you know. And these are the almost the labels that we put on, sometimes because of our own experiences in the past, sometimes because of what society's told us is good and bad, sometimes what our parents have told us is good and bad, our family members, friends. You know, we go through life being told, no, that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's bad, don't do this, do that, you know, and those are forming, you know, those judgments are kind of forming and opinions until we really look at what's going on in the universe. Because I can tell you there were many, many things I used to label bad before I got into this work that happened in my own life, and also what other people experience. But, you know, I deal with clients who have, you know, been raped, who have gone through, you know, I've actually also coached clients who've been the individual who has, you know, done the murder or things like that. And actually, when we just take off all the labels and take off all the what society thinks it should be, and we just look at what was the perfection, you know, they free themselves of all this guilt and shame and emotion. And, you know, it's just so liberating for them to just remove those blocks and just get on with their life, you know.
I've and I hope she doesn't mind. I've got someone watching right now. She's actually given a message saying hello to you. She's just shared it to their Lady Leaders Global Group.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure she won't mind me saying her name. Her name is Ghazala, and she's a former guest of mine as well. And she's a survivor of honor killing. Without going into the honor killing scenario, but things like surviving honor killing, things about people who have experienced trauma like rape and abuse or whatever. And I know I have as well. And I've talked about how has it served us today. Can you tell us how would you help someone get through that, through the work you do? What would because it's all about questions as well, isn't it? It's a set of questions that you ask, but how can someone, and is there a time element as well? Because this works in bereavement as well, right? Is there a time element? Is there a time element where you can actually do this? I mean, you know what I'm trying to get at. How do you do it, and when do you do it? And
the time that you do it is when you're ready for it. That's the simple answer. I have people come to me, and you mentioned bereavement. You know, sometimes I've consulted clients who've literally lost their mom, their dad, or some family member, and they want to be grounded, centered by the time that they're making a speech, you know, at the funeral. I remember one lady was doing a eulogy for her mom, and she literally just rang me up and said, you know, I need to do the loss process with you because I want to be centered and give my mom the, you know, the best eulogy I can, you know. And I said, great, let's get on with it. And so that was like within a few days. Then there's been people, you know, who for whatever reason may take their time, and they'll come to me after a few months, or and that can just be because society is imposing they should grieve, you know, for a certain. And I say should because if I go back to the GPS I just explained a moment ago, when you take your hierarchy of your GPS, anytime you're shoulding on yourself, what you're doing is injecting other people's priorities into your life. So I've had people come to me and go, you know, I should really grieve another 5 years. And I go, according to who? You know, because who's setting that rule? You know, this is your life. You decide how long you want to stay with this story, and how long you want to take to transform it. But similarly, you know, if we get a bit self-righteous and cocky and we start shooting on other people, you know, we're expecting them to change according to us. So now, you know, if we're saying to them, you should change, you know, especially if I hear, you know, couples doing that, I go, according to who? Should she do that? Should he do that? Right? And that's what I'm talking about in terms of human behavior. Now, when we go back to like just rape or incest and these kind of things, I think Saf is way more than just asking how it's served. And the Demartini method is a series of questions. You know, and if you really just take, like, we don't work with labels, okay? So rape is really a label, but when you look at the human behavior behind it, you know, that typically comes down to, when I've worked with clients who have been raped and they've gone through a sexual experience, is what we, you know, we kind of rename it that, because otherwise, you know, we're buying into the story that it's a bad thing because people have labeled, you know, rape bad. But if I look at, well, what happened? What's the perception you have this individual did or didn't do to you? And it would come down to things like, you know, they held me against my will, they constrained me, you know, they pushed me, they were, you know, inconsiderate of my space, or, you know, all these things, just typically, you know, behaviors. Well, one of the first questions of the Demartini method is based on the universal law of reflection and transparency, which means is I see in others, I see in myself what others see in me. Let me rephrase it. Whatever I see in others is in me. And other people see it in me. So that's the reflection, is I see it in me. Transparency is other individuals see it in me too. You can't escape that universal law. So anytime what we do is we should on other people, right? And we project onto them, we put them in the pit. We're actually too proud to admit that what we see in them, we have. And the moment we put somebody on a pedestal and we admire what they do, we will minimize ourselves, and and we're too humble to admit that what we see is inside of them. Does that make sense? That what we see in them, we have inside of us. So the moment we take and break down those labels, and I ask you, have you pushed people around in your life, Saf?
100%.
Have you held them against their will?
Well, not in a sexual sense, but yes, in other ways, yeah.
Absolutely. Great. I'm so glad you said that, because this is the thing, is that we do it in our own form. Right? We have all the behaviors, where, like, for example, you know, I know when I was growing up, my brother was pretty stingy with his money. Okay. Now, when I looked at that and I was going, well, where do I perceive myself to be just as stingy as him? And I'm going, actually, I'm really stingy with my friends. I'm stingy. Like, I don't share my friends, you know, I don't want to share them. I don't share my time with individuals. And as I've grown up, as my priorities have changed, stingy doesn't go. You know, my holding, my pushing people, and now I push people in this method, right?
This is not about right or wrong, is it? This is about.
No, it's just actually, no, it's just, listen, one thing I want your viewers to get is, when we see things as wrong, or we see things as they shouldn't have happened, we're questioning the work of the universe. And if some experience, some human behavior was not needed in the evolution of this world, it would go extinct. So the fact that it's there, let's find out what the perfection is. But let's take the ownership and go, okay, well, where do I do what exactly I'm judging this individual for, so that we see there's no difference. And actually, that's very humbling for people, because they go, all right, I just do what they did, but just in a different form. As you said, it's not right or wrong. But then you go further and you go, well, when you know, in the moment that they were doing that, how did it serve you in the moment and from that moment on? Right? And then you get to see what's actually occurring in the moment for them. And then what I believe Dr. John Demartini will go down in, you know, in history for, and I hope that I get to see him get a Nobel Prize for this, is the synchronicity, is that you were never experiencing one without the other. So when somebody is pushing you against your will, what's the opposite? Who's actually allowing you to be free? You know, who's actually doing that in your mind, because your psyche can't do one without the other. There might just be two people there, you know. And in fact, when I've worked with clients who you know, have had a sexual experience they've labeled incest, when I ask them, you see, I say, well, go back to that age. What did you call that experience? You know, what did you actually think was going on? And I tell you, Saf, I've had people say, I thought it was normal that, you know, daddy was doing this to me. I thought it was his love. I've had other people go, well, I thought it was fun. So all that's happened is when they've got older and people have said that's wrong, they've now labeled it wrong. But when we look at the experience itself they were having, you know, this is, I mean, and I'm sure what I'm sharing is going to be shocking people right now. But, you know, I'm not here to want to blend into what the other masters do. And, you know, because there are people that will tell you what you've been through has messed your whole life up. Whoever did that to you messed your whole life up. So then you carry on running a victim story and you keep going on and on and on about it. And actually your conscious and your unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between telling a story and living the event. And every time the individual's telling their story, they're getting effed up, you know, because all they're doing is recreating the emotion. That is not helping them transform their lives. That's making them stay a victim of their history rather than become a master of their destiny by asking certain quality questions, getting them to see the perfection in that, seeing how all of that served, seeing whatever they were, you know, judging in them, they have in themselves. And if that hadn't have happened, how that would have even been a drawback, how that would have not been an experience. And actually what happens, Saf, is I don't have an individual that isn't, if as long as they're willing to look, by the end of the experience, they are grateful that they went through it. And I kid you not, in my office, I have this magic wand. And I say to them,
I'll say that a few times.
And I say to them, if I've got this magic wand, I can make sure that that event didn't happen for you. The way it did, I can just take it out of your life. Would you have wanted that? And they go, I would go through it again without changing anything. And for me, that's the true transformation, not the keep going, yeah, what happened to me was wrong. And, you know, whoever did that and playing that side of things, you know, I'm here to want to transform lives so that people can move on from certain things. I know that Dr. Demartini, we've had people in the program who've been gang raped and we've transformed their lives and they've gone on to do amazing things, you know, but until then, all of this was holding them back. You know, you've done certain things that you say that, you know, your whole addiction, when you came to me, you're like, I feel so shameful for doing this. And why did I do this? And all my family that had to do. And when we got to unravel that, you know, when we realized what you were doing was not good or bad, it was serving people as much as it wasn't. Now, that's the key thing I want to make here, is that what I'm sharing is that I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm also not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's an event that is neutral, that had both sides. And when we're only seeing one side of it, we're not seeing the truth, because that's our illusion. We just see one side. When we see both sides, we see truth. So I really want to make sure the viewers get that I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just seeing that some things that we experience in our life will happen at times. And when we really ask those questions, we get to see the perfection in it. We get to play in that, you know, seeing that loving matrix that we can't have one without the other at any given time. And that's what makes up, you know, the synchronicity to allow us to see, oh, well, definitely had both sides. You know, we move on. It's that, you know, it's that animal kind of, I only want pleasure and prey, and I want to avoid predator and, you know, any kind of challenge that makes us stay juvenile independent.
That's what I was going to say. It works the other way as well. So when people are having a good experience in their life, a positive experience, they choose to not even look at any drawbacks to that because they want to stay in that moment, right?
Yeah, exactly. And when I do share that with some people, they go, "Huh? Are you crazy? Like, why would I want to look at the downsides of something I think is amazing?" And I think you do this when you've messaged me a few times and you've gone, even when you've got contracts or TV shows and all these amazing things that you perceive are happening in your life, the minute you look at the downsides, you're going, actually, this is going to take so much more of my time. I'm having to turn away opportunities. I'm spending less time with my family. I'm missing out on certain events and things. It's just that it's got the other side. Doesn't mean that it's good and bad, but we make that. When I said earlier, our GPS determines the choices and the decisions we make, because if we see something serves that GPS, we're going to take the opportunity. We're going to say yes to something. The only time we ever say no is when we don't see enough value in our GPS to say yes.
Back to, and I'm sure it's a question that the audience is dying for me to ask, and I'm going to ask about when we're talking about abuse and rape and stuff. Yes, there are two sides. But at that particular time, the actual act of that is wrong. Do you see that as being wrong?
In the actual act, my perception of it would not be wrong. When it's happening, your perception of it could be wrong. So I've been through certain things where I've gone, oh, when that happened, in the moment, I'm perceiving it to be wrong. Because in the moment we're charged, we're emotionally charged. There's no such thing as, we're in our animal brain, and we do have that. So it's not going to be that it doesn't ever happen. That's going to take over time. But then when we use what we call the executive center, the prefrontal cortex of our brain, that we can then ask questions to go, well, that very event that I did label wrong, when we do ask these questions about how did it serve as equally as it didn't, then we don't see it to be wrong. But in the moment, we will see it to be wrong, because it's not, in the moment, we're not perceiving it to help our values or our priorities. So I go through a lot of events and I go, well, that was really shit, and it's not until afterwards that I sit and I reflect and I go, well, how did that serve me today? Or how did that serve me back then at the time that I was going through it? And there are certain sexual experiences I've had where I've had to ask those very discomforting kind of questions of myself and go, well, how did that serve me? But there are certain things that, there's nothing that you can't see the hidden order in unless you are not willing to look for it. If you're willing to really go, bypass everything that, you've been taught and go, if you really want to know why things happened, why they happened to you, it's a very profound way of looking at things that makes a shift on a cellular level for us. I've had people who've transformed, certain illnesses. They were told they would not be around long for. I've had people go through certain illnesses because of emotional baggage that they've had before and told that they wouldn't conceive. The moment we clear the emotional baggage, they conceive and they have kids. The mind-body connection is very, very interesting, and it's very strong. So whatever's going on for us on an emotional level, because 95% of that is happening unconsciously, sometimes we experience that. The minute we label something good, the minute we label something positive, or the minute we label something bad and negative, it sits in our unconscious until we go in and we actually ask the quality questions that brings that perception into neutral. And when we neutralize something, it's in that moment that we have true grace. It's in that moment that we really are connected to our creator. That moment we connect to the universe, because in that moment there's no human will. It's actually when human will matches divine will and you see it perfect, all that's left is thank you, I love you, and that's what's moved on. And when I mean I love you, it doesn't mean, oh, I love you because it's all positive. No, I love you because I see both sides. When you have unconditional love for your children, it's because you see both sides of them. Some days they're a great people to be around, some days they're pain in the ass, right? But you have unconditional love for them, and in that moment is where the unconditional love comes. It's that moment you're able to really see both sides of them, and not wish them to be any different. I've had people who have opened up amazing organizations, rape organizations, because of their own experiences, and they've gone on to help thousands of people. I remember I was told a story, I can't remember if it was Dr. Demartini or somebody else, but they said, when we question, is something like this wrong or right? Well, if we take a look at, in Africa, you have these they're not gangs, tribes, right? They have these certain tribes, and in order to be inaugurated in a tribe, you have to have had sex with somebody below the age of like 14 or something, and that's what gets you inaugurated, or you get killed. So now, when someone like that goes out, and because they have to do that, and they rape someone, is that good and bad? Is it good? Like, it's almost like the who do you save? Do you save someone else? You save yourself? Like, there comes those questions, right? But what really makes anything good or bad is morality. And morality is not what we're living. There's civil laws for that, but I'm talking about universal laws, that if we take things out where we really see there's, that things are neutral, and that there is no good and bad. Because I know there are so many people who've been through events that they once labeled bad, and when they went through them, days, weeks, months later, they go, oh, well, that happened actually was really, most of the time they label it good, but actually, it was both sides. The moment we see that, I don't want to, I don't know about you, but I don't want to wait years and months, years and years to see my perfection in my life, because I want to be able to see how an experience is serving me now, how it has done before, and move on from that. The baggage that's basically, anything we can't be thankful for is baggage. Anything we are thankful for is fuel for us to move forward in our life.
And you talk about the moment. I had that moment in my last in the boot camp with yourself, and it was the most exhilarating and inspiring moment I've had in my life, because, as you know, I was holding on to guilt and shame for a number of years, and I truly believe that I have never, ever, ever in my life had self-worth, and now I do. And it was all because you helped me dissolve guilt and shame that I was holding on to for such a long time. And now I look at that, and I see, because I see both sides, it's brought to a level of equilibrium, and it's just incredible. It's incredible what it's done to me emotionally, physically, vocationally, financially, in all aspects of life. How do you explain that? How can something like that bring so much self-worth to me that has basically transformed my life? How do you explain that to people? Because you've got one coming up. Before you answer that question, when's your next boot camp? I mean, it's coming up soon, right?
It's next weekend, yeah, 21st, 22nd of November.
Are there any spaces left?
There's 5 now. Yeah, I have a small group, so there's only 5 spaces left, and it's online, obviously, because of the lockdown.
Yeah. I mean, I've been there. It's changed my life forever, guys. I'm not just saying that. It's just transformed me. But that's the actual website. If you go onto the actual website, and you can find all the information. Yeah. So please answer that question. How can something that you've taught me and taught thousands of other people transform me such that not only have I accepted and seen the good of something that I always perceived as bad, dissolve all the guilt and shame that I had for many, many years, and for the first time have self-worth in my life and just have a life beyond my wildest dreams?
So
how does that happen?
Well, first of all, it takes you to come forward to want to address something, like I said before, you know, and that's what you had, Saf. When you came to me, you didn't come to me with this kind of like, no, it's not. You're like, all right, ask me the questions, let's go, you know, let's see what. But yeah, of course, you're going to struggle with some questions, but you were willing to really push through. You know, that was one of the key things it takes, is if you're willing to really look at the perfection of what's going on. Now, any time we have guilt or shame, now guilt is typically when we've done something to other individuals in our life in the past that we thought caused them more pain than pleasure, more drawback than benefit, more negatives than positives. We'll hold on to that. And what we'll do is we'll overcompensate in the present because we don't feel worthy of receiving anything, whether that be money, opportunities, relationships. That guilt is there sitting, and we're just trying to overcompensate for it because we keep going, oh my God, that thing I did like years and years and years ago, I'm overcompensating for it here. So that sometimes what happens is that even if money comes to you, you almost like unconsciously go, you will set up these so-called self-sabotaging systems to make sure that that money goes back out again, right? Or alternatively, you go, hey, universe, I'm not worth anything. Please don't send me any money because of what I did back in the past. Now, this isn't you actually saying it, but this is your unconscious. You know, all altruistic acts, there are either a compensation of guilt and shame of the past, you know, or they're actually a hidden agenda of the future. Now, most of the times they're hidden guilt and shame of the past. And shame is when we've done something to ourselves that we feel didn't serve us. So we will then also do exactly the same. And, you know, the reason I call the workshop Life's Block Busting Boot Camp, because is sometimes you don't know what those blocks are. Like when you came to me, you said, you know, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to really make a difference in the world. And I want to, you know, impact people like this, but I just don't know what's blocking me. And the moment we, you know, I think the first conversation we had, right, I was able to just go, well, this is going to be a big piece for you, because it's years and years of guilt that you've held on to, you know. But the moment we actually ask what I did to some individual, how did it serve them? How did it allow them to live out their highest priorities at the time? What did they get to do? Who did they get to connect with? And we see that our actions was absolutely what was needed for their growth as much as ours. It no longer becomes a bad act. It becomes a necessary act that was needed in the time for all the individuals involved. And then you go, well, if I take away what I did, that means I take away everything that happened as a result of my actions. You know, would you do that? And you go, gosh, not now that I've seen, you know, just as many benefits. Now, again, going back to what you know, what we looked at in your terms of your guilt, we're not saying what you did was bad. We're not saying what you did was good. What you did was just of value to individuals that had both sides. You know, what you did, the acts that you did, it had both sides. And that frees you up. And what that does is it, you know, increases your self-worth, because now you see that no matter what you did or you didn't do, you were worthy of love. And when the moment you're able to see that, and you can thank yourself for that very thing that you once perceived was negative, you free yourself of that guilt and shame. That opens up your opportunities, because now you're letting the universe know, oh, I didn't mess it up. It was in the perfect order. So I'm worthy of receiving. And then that's exactly what happens. That's why a lot of the business owners I work with, entrepreneurs, you know, professionals, anything like that, they get really surprised, like when they dissolve guilt and shame with me. It's like, I don't understand. Like, I mean, well, your message was lovely the next day. Like literally within 24 hours, you were having opportunities and money come to you. Like, I've just got a payment out of nowhere, you know? And that's not, I don't call that, you know, randomness. I think there's a hidden order in that, and that's you increasing your self-worth. And the same, and that's exactly why I've put it in the workshop, so people can really get to grips with why this is so important, that anytime we're thinking somebody else has done something to us, we're going to hold on to it, you know, that we perceive negative. Anytime we think we've done something that's out of, what we call order, what we're in our, in our limited mind, in our narrow mind, we're going to call that a negative, and we're not going to, that's going to be holding on to us. The minute we remove those blocks, like I said, you get out of this emotional reaction and you get back into inspired action. And from August, since I've since you've attended the workshops, like I've been following your journey, and all I see is inspired action with you, and it's so inspiring to see your journey.
It's so inspiring to be part of this whole thing. It really is. But just before we finish, because we've gone longer than what we anticipated, but that's because it's so beautiful. I do have a lot of addicts watching this. How does this work fit in with an addict? Because a lot of, like myself, I'm an addict as well, and a lot of the stuff that I did, I was under the influence of. So where does the work that you do, does that recognize that you can be intoxicated? Does it recognize the intoxicated person doing certain things that they perceive to see that was wrong?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Well, first of all, let me chuck a truth bomb out there. Okay, we're all frigging addicts. Okay, yeah, I'm addicted to this work. You were addicted to a substance. You're now addicted to what you do now on a daily basis, which is this. You just transform your addiction. So going back to that GPS, when you look at what's highest in your priorities, right, you are addicted to whatever it is. Now, when I say you're addicted, you wouldn't call yourself an addict to that, but other people will. So people will say, you're addicted to your work. And you're going, I'm actually just doing what I love doing, right? But somebody who doesn't have a higher value in their hierarchy of work will call you an addict. Similarly, and I've worked with people who've taken cocaine, sometimes weed and alcohol, all different types of things. Now, the key thing that when they come to me and they say, I want to get rid of my addiction, right? And I go, so what's the benefit of you doing it? And they go, I don't think you understand, Mummy. I've come to you because you've been recommended that you can help me overcome the addiction. You're asking me what's the benefit? There isn't any, and I want to get over it, and I don't want to do it anymore. And I go, just answer the question. What is the benefit of you taking a substance or drinking, whatever it is? And, eventually after some push and pull, that's normally what happens at the beginning, we come up with a list of at least, sometimes 100, 200 benefits of why they're doing the behavior they're doing. And what we then do is we take a look at those benefits, and first of all is actually acknowledging how you have created the perfect strategy for you, whether that be drink, whether that be alcohol, whether that be drugs, whether that be weed, whatever that is. You've created a perfect strategy in your life to get whatever was important to you, and that's all the 100 reasons you've given me why you're taking it. Now, if I show you alternative ways that you're going to tell me, by the way, I'm going to say, let's take the first benefit you get from doing that. And I'm going to say, well, like, for example, I did a lady, we were doing a lady with smoking recently. And she said, we realized that actually the reason she was smoking was it was a connection to the husband where their marriage was quite rocky. And he used to go and buy her cigarettes. So because he used to go and buy her cigarettes, they used to connect on that. And if she stopped smoking, her mind goes, how am I going to connect with my husband? And that's going to end in divorce. Right? So the moment we go, okay, well, how can we create a connection with your husband in an alternative way, alternative to the smoking? And then what I do is I link that alternative way. By the way, I'm sharing the Demartini addiction process here. Is we take that and then we link it to their priorities. So hers was like, how do I connect with my husband? Well, I can go for a walk with him. I can watch TV with him. So we took a few of these alternatives and I go, how does that help you in your highest priority? And we didn't stop until she was inspired to want to do the new actions as opposed to the old. And I've had cocaine addicts who've been to rehab and things like that helps for a little while. And then what happens is they'll come back and their neural pathways still say, but hang on a minute, I'm off the drug. Therefore, I'm missing out on all those benefits I was getting. So how do I get that? Get the drug back. Does that make sense?
100%.
Now, Now going to, and then all we do is we link the new behavior, because your neural pathway has to make the connection that going this way is more beneficial, because otherwise you're not going to break the addiction you have of the substance. Because, and by the way, you know, when I work with people who take substances, whatever, the piece I love seeing is them actually, you know, making the connection as to why they're even doing it. Because in that moment, I ask them to thank themselves for creating a perfect strategy, because I don't see it to be wrong. I see it being a perfect strategy to get what's most important. And everyone has a strategy, just like babies cry to get what they want. People are taking drugs to get what they want. People are smoking to get what they want. And why label it good and bad? Let's just find a way, if they do really want to overcome it, let's find a way to still get them their benefits met that the drug is giving them, just in alternative ways, so that they don't perceive anything can be missing. And then, you know, when you asked me, what about when you're under the influence? I worked with a lady who called herself an alcoholic, and under the influence, she would just go, you know, absolutely what she called psycho. And she said about one event, she went round to an ex-boyfriend's house and smashed all the windows and smashed the car, you know, and absolutely went irate. And then when we looked at that behavior under the influence, was actually a strategy for her to really lash out, and she wouldn't have done it if she was sober. So she got what she got, you know, wanted to get done. And when we looked at what happened for him, you know, we were looking at the fact that actually he got he got insurance money, which got him better windows and all this stuff. And she knew he'd been talking about that a few months before. And I go, okay, so let's just take off all these labels here. So you got him the windows he's been talking about through insurance, and you got to, you know, say exactly what you wanted to. And if you hadn't done that, you would have been taking him back for his behavior, you know, because that actually made them split and go, that right, that's it, close the door. Whereas she kept taking him back prior to that. And she was like, yeah, I don't see it being I don't see that I need to change that behavior. So I said, so if you did need to take alcohol again and you did those behaviors, because the thing about this, Saf, this work is when you get to see how things that you were doing or others are doing, you love, right? And you see how they're serving, you don't wish it to be any different, as I've said before. And, you know, everybody just wants to be loved and appreciated for who they are, and who they are is an expression of their GPS, and not wanting to change that GPS is so deep, you know, and really connecting with people.
Wow. And again, when you're talking, I'm reflecting back to my stuff, and it just makes so much sense, because I've done the work and I keep on doing the work, and I try and help other people by using elements of the work. There's another guy that I work with. He's quite renowned in the addiction field. His name's TJ Woodward. And when he came out with something very similar, and he said it's a perfect strategy. And when he first said that, everyone's looking at him like, what? How can that be a perfect strategy? All the consequences that I've done, the people I've hurt, my you know what I mean, this, that, and the other. But it's very similar to what you're saying. It's a strategy at that moment, and then how. And yeah, that's what it is. It's just wonderful.
It's just a strategy.
So
I mean, and this is the thing, you know, like when people go to things like Alcohol Anonymous or any of the drugs places, like they're being wronged for what they're doing, you know. And what does that do to you when you're being told what you're doing is wrong? It's like that. It, you know, I like I said, I want to take the stance of things being wrong, take people through it, get them out of their victim history, get them into being a master of their destiny by asking quality questions, because no matter what you've done or not done, you're worthy of love. So let's find out what it is, how it's served, what it is you've done, so that you can actually love yourself. Only then are you going to receive love from elsewhere.
I was going to ask you to finish off on something, but I think you just did that. That was so beautiful. But please expect that people can find you on the website below. They can make inquiries about your work, what you do, even though you're based in London. Under the current situation, you do your work online.
Yeah,
so
current situation or non-current situation, I work globally anyway, so yeah, absolutely feel free. On my website you can find the event that's happening next weekend. I'm on Instagram under Manmeet Chowdhry. Please come and follow me. I've got a load of videos and content on there, so please have a watch, even if you can't join me for the event. And thank you again, Saf, for having me on here. And I really look forward to seeing you at the next perfect time. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been very humbling seeing your journey, and I'm even more inspired to see what comes from your life as I keep seeing more and more of your journey grow. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I need to come to one more sessions just to get a refresh, because like you can never stop learning, right? And you're still learning every day, aren't you? You're still learning. And
yeah, I just finished a 5-day course. We did 70 hours with Dr. Demartini, all about 14 hours a day. And what we were geeking out on was, the emotions and how they affect you at a subatomic particle and the journey of man to sun, just to geek out.
Wow, God. And now you've got your own course next week. So guys, if you guys are interested, as you know, it's global, so you can go online. I'm assuming it's going to be quite early in the morning in the USA, so that may not work, possibly. But Australia, not a problem. Anywhere in Europe, South Africa, Asia, South Asia, please go into the website optimumperformancesolutions.com and inquire. There's only a few places left. Manmeet, thank you very much for everything that you've done for me this year, and I know that we'll be connected forever. I'll be surprised if we're not. So
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. That was Manmeet. Really been a chat for half an hour. We've gone over 1 hour because that's how beautiful this work is. What she does, what I try and do, and I think we all work as a collective, and we're trying to teach and we're trying to train and educate people out there that do not lead a one-sided world. It's a two-sided world here. We've got to look at both sides. As Manmeet said, there's no predator without a prey. There's no prey without a predator. There's no good without bad. There's no positive without a negative. Let's look at both sides and embrace both sides and bring them to an equilibrium. And that's the way we need to look at it. I wanted to talk about the law of duality. I wanted to talk about the law of heuristic escalation, but we didn't have time for that. But if you want to know more about all these universal laws and learn more about the work that Manmeet does, please check her website, which is going along the bottom. And if you want to have any other inquiries, just give me a call or give me a shout, and I'll be happy to forward you her details or help you in any which way I can. Guys, this has been Saf Surgery. This has been Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. Don't forget, I'm on Filled with Factor TV this Saturday morning. The channel is 8 to 11. I'm on at 10:30. Sky Channel 192 Showcase, and repeats on Sunday morning every Saturday. Men's Talk. See you then, and also see you next week. Take care. God bless you. Peace.